Rachel and I went to go see, I believe I'm pronouncing this right, Les Miserables this past week. It's a French word. And as a classically trained singer, I felt it was appropriate I sing along with the movie, and no one appreciated that, especially because I didn't know the words or any of the notes. But you know, at least I was trying. Actually, I wouldn't do that because I'm not a classically trained singer. I started to be, but I'm not a good singer. I'll tell you what I am. I'm a mimic. I can sing like you can. My natural gift is to sound like other people if I need to. So I went in and I would sing, and I was the first freshman at Arkansas Tech to get a solo in the large concert, because the choir director came in and said, "We have a solo, here is how it goes." And he sang it, and I thought, I'll just sing it like he did. And I did, and I got the solo, because everyone loves it when you sound like them. I'm such a mimic to the point that I can't lead singing if I've been listening to Aaron Neville. It gets bad. After it, beyond passes blue. It just doesn't sound right. No one can follow you. So we've had a. But I remember the day that I went to that I decided that this wasn't for me. This whole singing world. I didn't even know what I was going to do with the degree. You know, just be real good at Church of Christ. I don't know. But I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I remember I was in Latin diction, which was a class you needed to take so that you could learn how to pronounce Latin words, because you sang in Latin a lot. And there was Latin diction, French diction, and all the different dictions. You didn't have to know what the words meant, you just needed to know how to pronounce them. And I was sitting in a classroom, and this classically trained singer was sitting in front of me, and me and about 5 other people in this choir room, and she looked at me, and she showed me the letter E. And she held it up, and she said, "Eh." And I said, "Eh." She said, "No. Listen. Eh. Eh." This went on for like 2 minutes. She would say it, and she'd go, "Benjamin, you're not listening to me." I don't know what else to do. There's just another culture or something that I can't get in my head. Like, I could sound like that. I could sound like them. But I couldn't live. I couldn't do all the things that they were going to ask me to do. I once got they would make us take voice lessons. And so we'd go, I had this voice teacher, and stayed with her for a year. And one time, I had gone to a concert the night before and had lost my voice and really couldn't do much. Like, we talked about some of the transitions, but we couldn't warm up. I couldn't sing, and she said, "Well, Benjamin, I'm going to have to give you a C for today because you lost your voice at the rock concert." It was a 0 credit hour class. Like, it was something you just did because they told you to do it. It wasn't worth anything. She gave me a C for moral defeat. Like, just because I deserved one. It's like running into someone at Walmart and they're checking you out pretty slowly and just saying, "I'm going to have to give you a C for today." It was just that bad. So, but anyway, I just thought, this is not cut out. The people who are super excited about this, I'm not one of them. I don't feel like it's important for me to learn how to say "eh" properly. So I chose another route, and here I am. But I couldn't live that life. I knew I could pretend to live that life. I just couldn't do it. It would eat me alive to have to pretend my whole life to be a classically trained singer. To do an impersonation of a classically trained singer my whole life would have just been the end of it. So, I understand where Jesus is coming from. When people come to him and tell him, I got this clicker, I'm sorry. I'm horrible about remembering this. I'll get better at one of these days. When people come to him and claim that they want to follow him. Now, if someone comes to me just on the street and says, hey, Benjamin, I want to follow Jesus. I mean, I'm like, oh yes, it'd be fantastic. You'll love our potlucks. Come on, let's go to the building. I'll show you around, and I'll let you meet the people, and let's get baptized. And like, I'm so gung-ho about converting people to Jesus that I will sometimes baptize people at the lake and they don't even know it. And that's not true. But I love people come and say, I want to follow Jesus, and we say, yes, come on, it is the life for you. And people did that to Jesus. When they showed up and said, I want to follow you, he did something strange, something that's not what we'd expect. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the lake to the other side. This is setting up the story it's about to follow our passage today. But he sees a crowd coming, and what we often do when a crowd comes is we say, well, quick, let's get on our best behavior. Let's sing for them. Let's preach to them. And Jesus said, let's get in the boat and leave. Someone comes up to him, the teacher of the law, came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus replied, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Someone else, another disciple, said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. But Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. I don't know if Jesus took any evangelism classes, but this isn't good. Like, this isn't what you would think would be the way to convert. It just doesn't make sense. They were wanting to follow him. And he says, birds of the air have their nests, foxes have their holes, but I don't have anywhere to lay my head. And then someone comes up and says, I've got to bury my father. And he says, let the dead bury their own dead. Sometimes we take the sayings of Jesus like it's just normal. We've heard them all of our lives. They're just commonplace. But this is strange. This is not the way we would have responded to these people. In Jesus' name, this is not the way we would have responded to these people. But this is the way Jesus means. When Jesus sees a crowd, he goes to the other side of the lake. And when people come up and say, I want to follow you, Jesus' response is, this is going to affect where you sleep. See, oftentimes when we think about following Jesus, our instinct is to believe what he taught. When you want to follow a rabbi, our instinct is to believe what his teaching. I think what this guy is saying is right. And so I'm going to go to that church. People switch churches all the time because they found somebody else that they think what that guy's saying is right. And by all means, come on. We believe that what we teach about Jesus is accurate and good. What we teach about the grace of God is accurate, biblical, and true. But following Jesus is not about finding the right place, the right teacher to tell you what you want to hear. To tell you what you've always thought. If that was the case, then just sit at home and think. Just sit in the dark and think to yourself. Because sometimes I was told growing up, don't read any books by someone who's not from the Church of Christ. Well, if I'm going to read only the people I disagree with, or only the people I agree with, why in the world should I read it all? Why not be challenged by an author? Why not disagree with somebody that I'm reading? I disagree with everybody that I read. Everybody. Well, you know, except the Bible. But the majority, I read for the Galatians class we're finishing up next week on Sunday morning, which, by the way, still need a teacher for 2 Sunday mornings from now. And you can even go grab a partner and say, let's tag team this. I'll do one week, you do the next, and we'll alternate. 3 of you. 4 is too many. But maybe 3. Alternate. But for that class, I've got a commentary by a guy with the last name Bruce, Kozar, and Witherington III. And they all say different things. They disagree with each other. Sometimes we think that I've got to find the place that teaches what I believe. And that is nonsense. You need to find the place that helps you follow Jesus every day, Monday through Saturday, and even on Sunday. It's not about whether or not we all get it right. It's about whether or not we are following Jesus. And Jesus, whenever someone comes to Him and says, I want to follow you, He doesn't say, well, do you believe all the things I teach? He says, it's going to affect where you sleep. Now, dead bury their own dead seems a little harsh, and it can be. But the best explanation of this, there's a book called Sayings. Oh, I forget, the author just left my head. He went to lunch or something. I'll get the author to you. I'll send out an email or something. It's a good book. It's about the sayings of the Bible. We have our sayings, like somebody was telling me something the other day. They said they burst into tears. I thought, that sounds violent. Like, you didn't actually burst. You started crying. We have our sayings, and people from other areas came in and tried to decipher what we were talking about half the time. They took it literally. They would be off, and that's often the mistake we make with the Bible, is that they're sayings, and we aren't aware of that they have these sayings. And this book suggests that this particular passage, when he says, let the dead bury their own dead, it was a type of saying that those matters take care of themselves. Let the hungry feed themselves. Let the dead bury their dead. It was a way of saying that matter will handle itself. There is something more important. Because all of us know this. If we're waiting for things to get perfect for us to do something, we'll never get it done. If we're waiting for the time to be right to follow Jesus, you'll never do it. The time's never right. If you're waiting for the time to be right to start this program or that program or start eating healthier or exercising, it never is right. Those things will take care of themselves. Follow Jesus today. Jesus says, if you want to claim to follow me, you better know a couple of things. It's going to be, well, first, it's going to change where you live. It's going to change where you sleep. It's another way of saying it's going to change everything about your life. It's going to change you. It's going to make you a different husband, a different wife. It's going to make you a different father, mother. It's going to change the way you operate at your job. It's going to affect how you manage your finances. It's going to affect what media you take in. It's going to affect everything. If you think it's just about whether or not you believe certain principles or you believe certain biblical truths, that is nonsense and is a lie that Satan is trying to say. I believe that church should be done like this. And I think that's biblical. Well, good for you. Foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. well, we need to get our church to do this or to do that. Let the dead bury their dead. You follow Jesus. We have made church about what happens in these walls and what we believe in these walls. We've made it about the teachings instead of how the church as a group, as a body, represents Jesus out in the world, day to day. How you live, how you follow Jesus is going to change everything about you. See, if it were me and someone came to me and said, "Hey, Benjamin, I'll follow you to the ends of the earth," I'd say, "Okay, well, I'm not going that far, but you can follow me around here." If the crowd started approaching as I was getting in the boat, I would say, "Peter, hold up. Drop the anchor. There's a crowd coming." But Jesus knew that following Him is not for the weak acting. It's not for the weak of spirit. It's for those who are willing to go and do, to take risks, to involve yourself with people that are dangerous. All Christians should be entrepreneurs, which the word actually means risk takers. We should all be willing to step outside of our comforts, go to places where we have no place to lay our head. Go to follow Jesus to places where we're going to have to let the things we worry about those things take care of themselves, and we will follow Jesus. It takes more than just cognitively understanding what Jesus said. I know what I believe. That church over there, they teach what I believe. Who cares, as James would say, who cares what you believe if you aren't doing squat? That's a loose interpretation of James 2:14 and James 2:17. Who cares? Who cares if you got it right or if somehow the teaching, it's all accurate? But Jesus, I was accurate. But I never knew you. You didn't follow. You're waiting until your life is in the right place to follow Jesus. You'll never start. You'll just never start. And if you're waiting until it's a safe venture, it's an easy journey, you'll never start. We have been sold a false bill of goods. It says, if we can just believe the right things. We can just think the right things. Then we will stand in good position to God. That's flimsy faith. That faith is great. The faith that moves, the faith that acts, the faith that endures, that follows Jesus, that sort of faith. Change. You'll have to stop worrying about the things that you've always worried about. You'll stop taking the safe road. We have no examples of, or we have no telling of whether or not these people followed Jesus. Whether or not they got in the boat and went to the other side with him. But we know they had reservations. At least one. And we know that Jesus offered reservation. Jesus wants you to know that if you're going to dive into this, if you're going to follow Him, it's It's more than just believing and understanding. It's going to affect where you sleep. It's going to affect your priorities. And you're going to have to let it. You're going to have to let it change you before you jump in. Jesus' response to those who wished to follow him was a bit of a warning. So, by all means, I invite you to follow Jesus. I invite you to follow him. But I must warn you, it is dangerous. We talked about in class this morning, following Jesus disconnects you from the world. Now, you're not running away from everybody. You're not trying to distance yourself from just human beings, but it will put you at odds with those who see the world through the world's lenses. It is a challenge. It is tough. But it is worth sleeping on a stone. It is worth reordering your priorities. Now listen, Jesus slept places, right? He had places he lived. He had a home. His mother had a home. He stayed with Peter quite a bit. He slept places. He had a boat. Jesus slept in boats a lot. Twice, actually. He's not saying that this is exactly how it's supposed to be. Like earlier, when he said, if you're having a problem with lusting, gouge out your eye. That's called hyperbole. Blind men struggle with lust too. Right? So, it's not a cure-all. He's just saying, go to extreme measures. He's making a point. And the point is, it's going to be difficult. It'll take you places that you've never been before. It'll make you uncomfortable, like you've never been uncomfortable before. And isn't that what we're most afraid of? Oh, how the first century Christians would have loved to live in a world where the greatest danger they faced was just an awkward moment for the teller. Or a friend. Or a co-worker. They had Roman soldiers hoping to kill them, and we're thinking, well, our social contract says I'm not supposed to talk about this with you. I'm not supposed to tell you that the reason I'm helping you today is because Jesus helped me unconditionally. You're supposed to do it, not worry about it. I'm not supposed to bring up the fact that Jesus is alive to the living. Sure, we'll bring it up. That's a place. That's funeral talk, right? We talk about Jesus' resurrection and all that there. But that does not belong to Walmart. Following Jesus will make you uncomfortable. If you're up for it, by all means, let's go for it. Let's do this. Any way you know how, let's do this. But it cannot be, following Jesus cannot be a cognitive exercise in which we somehow try to build up a doctrine that is perfect in the eyes of God. And bow down to our golden doctrine so that he might be impressed. Following Jesus changes where you sleep. It changes your habits. It changes your life. It reorders your priorities. That's the only way to follow him. As we said last week, I'm not saying that that somehow you've got to follow Jesus perfectly and then somehow he will save you. His grace is that we get to follow him. And that's him justifying. The word we use for justify means I've been forgiven. old preacher friend of mine used to say, justify means just if I had never done it. But he sanctifies us too. He makes us holy. He's working on you and me. Slowly. Me and you, we're following Jesus. Not perfectly, but we're following. Find me a disciple of Jesus. Any of the 12 that followed him perfectly. You can't find one. Peter followed him until it got a little dicey, and then he said, I don't know the guy. 3 times he said that. The third time he swore. That's not good. You would think Jesus said, well, that's inappropriate for a follower of Jesus. Out. But when it got out, he just made him the leader. Got out when you got up. And they didn't send him to prison. But see, that's the good news, is that they sent our Savior to the grave. And he beat. So we too will follow our Savior to the cross. And we will follow him to the grave. And we will follow him out. But it's going to, along the way, it's going to take us some places that are uncomfortable. It's going to challenge us. It's going to challenge our worldviews. It's going to challenge our priorities. It's going to challenge our finances, our marriage. It's going to challenge us. If following Jesus doesn't challenge you, then you are not doing it. If Jesus, I think it's Anne Lamott who says, if Jesus loves everyone that you love, and hates everyone that you hate, for the same reason that you love and hate them, you are worshiping an imaginary God. You're just worshiping your own vision. It has become a cognitive exercise. If we just stuff God into our head, we will change him. He won't change us. But if we are following Jesus, we are following the Rabbi, the Savior, the King, the Messiah. It will change you. And you will know it from day one. So follow him. Call him to actively follow him. If you've never begun to follow him, keep in mind, it's difficult. It's challenging. But if hearing that the foxes have holes and the birds have nests, but Jesus has no place to lay his head, and if hearing that you need to reorder your priorities and put him on top of things that you think are super important, if upon hearing this you still think, I want to get in that boat and travel to the other side of the sea with you, Jesus, then come on. It is through that journey, through the water, your commitment to him. It's through that journey that you will find who God created you to be. And that is a follower of his Son. So start the journey today. And I don't care if it's a restart or maybe you got to a false start. You got to go back. Start the journey today. Continue the journey today. But never fool yourself into thinking that it's just some sort of mental exercise. It is a walking around. It involves a cross and a grave. But it also involves a resurrection. If you want to start that journey, restart that journey, or have prayers as you wrestle through some of the anxieties and some of the challenges of your journey. Whatever it is you need, please come forward while we stand and sing.